welcome to my video for this week. If you don't know who I am or anything about me, you can check out the video in the description below. I will link my introduction from last week. But today I'm going to be talking about how I could potentially be suing my GI doctor. Well, my old one, as you can tell by the title below. But before I do that, I just want to mention something real quick. Last week, if you look at the intro and yesterday's video from Nicole, if you look at the intro, at the very end you see two girls named Raina and Riley. But if you also look, they never had a video last week. This is because both of them have decided that they can't really do YouTube right now. Due to this, they are not going to be part of the Tummy Hurt Squad, at least for now. Also, last week, you can tell that two other girls, Olivia and Carly, never posted. This is because of medical reasons last week, and hopefully you will see them this week. So now that I got that out of the way, let's move on with the video. For privacy purposes in this video, my old GI doctor is going to be referred to as Carl. At one point I will be mentioning my POTS doctor. He will be referred to as Jeff. And at one point I will be mentioning my new GI doctor, and he will be referred to as Russell. So now let's actually move on. To start it off, I'm going to kind of go back to the beginning. The reason for that is because in the end it all ties together and it kind of explains the whole situation on why. So in September of 2019, I started seeing Carl after really developing GI issues pretty badly in like July of 2019. So when I saw Carl, I found out he was EDS educated, and that made me feel a little bit comfortable because I have a hard time feeling comfortable with doctors. And the only reason why it made me feel comfortable is because I was like, okay, great. GI issues can happen with EDS. He's EDS educated. Maybe there's going to be a better patient-doctor communication. At the time, that's what I thought. So I present to him my symptoms, and he's like, okay, well, let's do an endoscopy. All right, endoscopy, he's already wanting to do tests. This is great. Maybe I can get somewhere soon, figure out what's going on. So I had the endoscopy done. It was still September. And nothing showed up. Like, he didn't see anything. The biopsies were normal. So I was like, okay, well, that's that. And he tells me, he's like, I'm going to put you on this medication. It's going to make your stomach work. It was a gut stimulating medication. So I was like, all right, Carl, do the medication. And then I was going to see him again in November. So in November, I saw him again after 2 months of taking this medication. And in the meantime, I'd gotten a little bit worse. So I told him, I said, Carl, I do not feel like this medication is working. Because it doesn't seem to be helping me at all, and I'm just getting worse. It's like, okay, well, I want to do an ultrasound to check things there, and I'm also going to put you on this appetite stimulating medication. I'm like, okay, so I was on a gut stimulant and an appetite stimulant, and I took both of those and had the ultrasound done. And I saw him again in December. So when I saw him, he's like, all right, the ultrasound's normal. It's like, okay. And then I told him, I said, Carl, I feel like I'm getting worse. I don't feel like this gut medication or this appetite medication is helping me at all. I had been taking the gut medication since September. Keep in mind, it was December at this point. And granted, I had only been taking the appetite medication for about a month. So maybe, maybe it wasn't enough time. But the fact that I had been on the other one from September to December and it wasn't doing anything should have been a sign. But no. He looks at me, tells me, well, I'm not too concerned right now. keep taking both medications. Okay, I'm gonna keep taking medications that aren't helping, it's fine. He wanted to see me again in a month, like January. So I saw him again. And this time I was still getting worse. My weight dropped a little bit. And the medications still weren't helping. So I said, hey, Carl, these medications aren't helping, and I feel like nausea and stuff is getting worse. He's like, all right, well, what triggers it? And I said, what triggers what? And Carl was like, what triggers, like, the GI issues as a whole? And I was like, okay, everything. Anything and everything I eat or drink. And he looks at me, and he goes, okay, keep taking the medications. September to January, medication not working. November to January, medication not working. All right. So I go home. He just sends me on my way, and that was the end of that appointment. Just for him to tell me to keep taking the medication. And I was supposed to see him again in February, so I did. And in February, I started to feel even worse. At this point, I was kind of fed up with the fact that these medications weren't helping me. And I was slowly starting to feel like I was just taking them to take them. So I told him, I said, hey, Carl, it's getting worse. These aren't helping. And he asks me the same thing again. What's triggering it? Anything and everything I eat. Okay. Keep taking the medications, and I'm going to put you on a medication for nausea. Okay. Maybe the nausea medication would help, is what I was thinking. But I was a little aggravated that he was going to keep me on medications that weren't doing anything. He wanted to see me again in June. So I was going to wait out till June. March went by, everything was fine. April went by, and things started to get worse. My intake started to become smaller from both food and fluids, but I was still eating and drinking enough to get me through a little bit. So I was like, all right, I can hold out till June. I'll be fine. And then in May, I got really bad. My intake became little to none, without pain and everything. And then I wound up having to move my appointment up. So I moved the appointment up, and I see him, and then he takes me off the medications, finally. Big shocker, you finally took me off these medications that I've been on since, September and November, that you kept me on when I said weren't working. It finally hit him. Oh, these aren't working. And he had me do a nutrition shake. So I was going to try that, and he finally decided to do more testing. So he was going to do a GES. Keep in mind, I had an endoscopy in September, an ultrasound in November, and then from November to May, it was all just keep taking the med, not figuring out what was going on or anything. So I finally had this GES done. It was a 2-hour GES. Now, keep this GES in mind, because this is going to help explain things later as to why I could potentially be suing him. So I have this GES done, and I find out that I'm delayed. Not just a tiny bit delayed, not in the middle of a delay, but delayed. Alright? And then I have an appointment with my POTS doctor, so I have an appointment with Jeff. And at this point, I was barely able to eat or drink. I felt so weak that rolling over in bed over there took up all of my energy. I felt like I could not really roll over. I felt like it took me forever to be able to stand. Every time I would stand, I felt like I was going to fall to the floor and faint. And Jeff was like, okay, I want to talk to Carl because I don't feel like you're in a safe position right now. And at the time, it was June. So between seeing my GI, having the GES done, and seeing Jeff, it was finally June, alright? So I then see Carl again, because a week and a half after the appointment with Jeff, I had another appointment with Carl because they called to set it up. And Carl looks at me and he goes, your GES is normal. I was confused because I was told it was delayed and then turned around and told it was normal. So you can't be delayed and normal, all right? And then he goes, and because of your little intake that you can tolerate and it not being enough to get you through and how bad you are right now, me and Jeff have decided that you need an NJ tube. So he decided to place a nasojejunal tube. Granted, this is something I never wanted. I was one to be like, oh, this is never going to happen to me. That's never going to be me. And so when I found that out, like, I was pretty upset. And I felt like I didn't try hard enough. So I was like, okay. And a week later, I had an NJ tube placed. I had it placed over here, like this one has. Was not this one. At the time, it was an 8 French tube. All right? And within one day, it clogged. So, I couldn't get it unclogged at all. My parents weren't home, and my only option at the time was to call my GI and figure out what I needed to do, whether I needed to go to the ER or, like, just what needed to be done. And as soon as I talked to his nurse was like, hold on, because he wasn't with the patient at the time. So I overhear him say, and then the nurse repeats it to me, but I overhear him say that I needed to go back to the hospital where I had it placed, and he was going to meet me there and place another one. I had the first tube placed endoscopically, so I was under, and the second tube was going to be placed the same way. So I was like, okay, great. And I'm thinking, he's probably going to move me up to a 10 French or something like that, or maybe it was just something's wrong with this 8 French, maybe I need another one. No. I wake up to a 16 French drainage tube in my nose. So big that I couldn't breathe. And you might be like, okay, but that's an exaggeration. No. It started off with, like, I could barely breathe out of the left side of my nose. And then I was starting to turn pale. I could barely speak. I could barely swallow. And I could barely breathe. It's like air would come out of my lungs and then it wouldn't be able to fully go. And it wasn't in my lungs. They even did an x-ray to check placement for that. But, like, if I even opened my mouth, all you could see was the tube. So, knowing I can't breathe, he comes into the room and looks at me, looks at my mom. At this time, my dad was frustrated because I couldn't breathe and aggravated to the fact that he went from an 8 to a 16 French, let alone an 8 French feeding tube to a 16 French drainage tube. And he wanted me to have something else placed, like a smaller tube. So, before my mom could say anything, my GI doctor looks at me, looks at my mom, and goes, she's not going to be able to breathe for a little bit. This is normal. I want to see her in 2 weeks anyways to place a surgical tube. Not knowing if it's temporary, not knowing if it's permanent, he wanted to place a surgical tube. Now, I don't agree with this, and neither does Russell, my new GI. We both think that it would have been a bad idea if I ever let that happen, because there's no point in putting in an unnecessary scar, not knowing if it's temporary or permanent. So, the next thing I know, a nurse comes in with discharge papers to send me home, not breathing. Okay? So I get sent home, not being able to breathe, and after I got in the car, I went to my children's hospital. And when I was there, the doctor there said it was way too big. It should have never been placed. She said you couldn't see my throat at all. Like, if I opened my mouth, all you could see was the tube. My throat's too small. And then they placed a 10 French tube over here. Let's keep in mind that my GI punctured the inside of the left side of my nose. Alright? So, I had to wait from June to this month, August, to be able to see Russell. Now, when I saw Russell, the nurse first looks at me and goes, so your GES that you had, because they got the report from that as well, when getting all my stuff, like his notes, the report and everything, she was like, the GES you had says delayed. I'm like, yeah. And she said, and in your doctor's notes it says normal. Like, yeah, he told me I was normal, but the thing said I was delayed, and it makes no sense. So they were in the process of trying to figure out exactly how delayed and everything, and Russell tells me you can't be both. And when I was talking to him about my symptoms and everything, he told me his biggest concern is gastroparesis because all of my symptoms add up to it, and my first GES showed the delay. So I have to get another one done. This time it will be 4 hours. But in the end, there's a possible chance I was lied to by my old GI, so chance I was lied to by Carl. And the fact that he sent me home not being able to breathe is also pretty bad. He kept me on medications that didn't help me, and everything. So I had enough, and I finally decided to go see Russell. And after hearing Russell tell me that there was a chance I could have been lied to, especially because it said delayed and then he said normal, it was pretty aggravating. Because I'm sitting over here now knowing that there's a possible chance I could have had an answer back in June. But I don't. I don't have an answer, and I didn't have one then. So, this is why, if things come back delayed, I could potentially sue him. My GI doctor, as you know, Russell, said that he wants to take the old GES, my symptoms, and the new GES and compare, especially if that one says delayed, and we will go from there. So, sorry for the ranting story time, but that is the story on how. I can't wait to see you guys next week, and I hope you enjoyed this video. Like I said, I will link the video from last week in the description below, and I will also link my Instagram in the description below. Bye, guys.